One of the most popular shows of the 2020s came to an end back in June, so it's time to talk about all 3 seasons of Squid Game, directed and created by Hwang Dong-hyuk and starring Lee Jung. This show is about some desperate and broke people who compete in childish games for millions, but it may cost them their lives. So it's time to talk about Squid Game and help you decide whether or not it's the right show to watch as a Christian. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host Tim, and we exist to help Christians live in the world, not of the world, by utilizing our convictions in the movies and shows we watch. Squid Game is rated TVMA for some violence, gore, language, it's a bit of nudity in season 1, as well as some drug references in seasons 2 and 3. So we're going to dive into any convictions you may have that may prevent you from watching Squid Game, any theological themes present within the series, and wrap it up with my own personal thoughts on the show. Without further ado, let's dive into the Christian Conviction Meter. If this is your first time here, the Christian Conviction Meter is a series of 5 convictions that may distract or hinder your relationship with Jesus. Ultimately, this is a resource to help you figure out whether or not Squid Game aligns with the convictions God has given you. And kicking things off here with violence and gore, this is a very violent show. Because it does deal with childish games, it does have a extreme adult spin in which you fail to compete in the game, you die. There's a lot of death a part of this show, specifically coming from shootings. There's lots of shootings contained within the show. It is very violent at times. There even is some fights that break out, some hand-to-hand combat, the use of weapons like knives and even forks, and just all-out brawls that are contained within the show. It is very violent in a lot of ways, but the biggest thing to note here is it's also a very gory show. There is so much blood that is a part of this show. It almost is like an over-exaggeration in the amount of blood that is a part of this series. But there also is cuts, scrapes, bruises, broken bones, and ankles, some of those things that are a part of this series. There also is a few scenes of a doctor operating an autopsy in which some limbs and organs are removed, and it can be pretty disgusting. We'll talk about that in our last category here as well, but this is a very violent show, as I talked about. It's going to be a 5 out of 5 in this category. Our next category is lust, and there is a bit more than I was anticipating in this show. First things first, there are a couple scenes of some characters in underwear. There also are scenes of characters getting stripped, but there is no nudity in the actual scene of clothes coming off to put on the uniforms to participate in the game. That being said, though, there is nudity that is a part of this show. There is a couple scenes of some men's butts, and there also is a sex scene that is a part of the show. Specifically in season 1, there is some upper exposure by a woman in the show, particularly in this scene. The actual scene is both heard and seen a little bit. At the same time here as well, there are plenty of innuendos, references, and jokes that are a part of the show as well. There also are some pretty dark moments in this show, showcasing some extreme vanity. There are a few people who kind of are more statuesque that are very much painted on nude. There is, again, no explicit nudity of these specific people, but it is implied that they really aren't wearing much. It's just all painted over in some really crazy designs and colors. There also is a reference to some necrophilia as well. There also is, in terms of some LGBTQ plus representation here, there is a transgender character who is a part of seasons 2 and 3 as well. All of these things in mind, because this is a very heavy category here, we're going to give this a 5 out of 5. Our next category is substances, and this is another one that has a lot in it. There is gas used to knock out many different characters so that they can transport them to where the games take place. At the same time as well, there is some smoking, there's some heavy drinking, namely with some different types of liquors involved as well. There also is the use of some harder substances. Now, I cannot explicitly tell you what that substance is in particular, but it is very much in a kind of candy looking form here, kind of like a bottle cap, so to speak, but it is a part of the show and talking about how it affects the people who use it as well as those who haven't used it in a while and how irritating it is to not be using. Both of those effects are in this show. That being said, though, there is no explicit drunkenness. That is a part of the show, which is nice. That being said, this is still a high category, 4 out of 5 here. Our next category is profanity, and who knew Koreans had such vulgar taste in language? There's a lot here. Hell is used, the DI and DA words are used here. The AS word is used, the BI and BA words are also used, as well as the SH and SL words are used, and the PU word is also used here as well. But there is a good chance I missed some language here and there. There definitely is a lot here. On top of that, there is, of course, multiple uses of the F word throughout all 3 seasons of the show, sometimes, once again, in the same sentence. That is something to kind of keep in mind here. There is also multiple uses of different types of language and vulgarity to demean women, calling them certain verbs that I will not use here on the channel, but it's meant to demoralize and demean women. All of these things in mind, it's going to be a 5 out of 5 in this category. Our last category is intense/horror scenes. While this is not explicitly a horror show, it does lean into some thriller elements. The entire time of playing these games is intense due to the weight of if you fail, you die, and there is a lot of death that is part of the show. Sometimes it is just way over the top. I mean, it's just insane, the amount of death that is a part of this show. There is also lots of arguing. There is some violence and fighting. There also is just intensity in the financial strain that is a part of each of these characters. There also is the removal of some bodily organs and things of that sort that is a part of the show. I do want to be very sensitive here because I know this is a very sensitive topic. There are several characters who are a part of multiple seasons who, due to the intensity of these games, willingly take their own life. And so that is a part of the show. You do not necessarily see them struggling, I will say that, but you do see them prepping to carry out what they are about to do, or you see them left. And so that is a part of the show. It is very intense and it can be very horrifying to watch. What also is horrifying to hear is threats against not only adults but also children as well. There is a birth scene that is a part of season 3, and there is a couple moments throughout the season where the infant's life is threatened, and that can be pretty scary and intense to watch. At the same time too, like I said, the games are intense to watch, but there also is several other scenes here that are intense, such as a dog attack in which the dog ends up losing its life, and there also is a Russian roulette scene that is a part of the show. This is a very disturbing show in general. There's a lot here. It's going to be a 5 out of 5 in this category as well. So our grand total on the conviction meter for all 3 seasons of Squid Game is going to be a 24 out of 25. This is one of the highest shows we have rated here on the channel. There's a lot here. There is so much violence and gore. There's a lot of language. There's a lot of intensity to this show. And of course, there is a lot of substance abuse and of course, some nudity and lustful things that are part of this show. So if you struggle in any of the areas we talked about, or they just make you feel uncomfortable, or really you just have no desire to watch it based on the things we talked about, that's okay. This show is not worth you compromising your convictions that God has given you. There are plenty of other shows and movies that you can watch that don't compromise the convictions God has given you. This leads us beautifully into our next topic as we dive into some theological themes that are present within Squid Game. There are a few moments here that are very interesting and kind of surprised me just a little bit in referencing to Christianity. One of the things here that is mentioned is there is a conversation where a guy assumes that he's trying to talk to him about Jesus, not talking to him about the games. And he's like, hey, I come from a long line of Buddhists, things of that sort. There also is, unfortunately, a massive stereotype in season 1 of a character who proclaims faith in Christ. It's so stereotypical, and it doesn't even feel like a Christian talking. There is a lack of empathy and compassion for those around. It sounds very much like a stereotypical turn and burn preacher, but he doesn't get like all super turn and burn here. It's just some comments that are made throughout the show. Pretty disappointing, but also not surprising. There also is some other religious stuff that is a part of it. Like I said, in season 1, there also is a girl mocking the stereotypical Christian, and there also is a shaman who's a part of seasons 2 and 3. It's just really weird. I don't know what else to say. It's just kind of weird. At the same time, too, greed, lust, and vanity are all littered throughout this entire show. I mean, good Lord. The whole reason that these characters and people are participating in the games is because they're down on their luck. They're broke. So their desire to earn money, their greed very much takes over and compromises their willingness to do or not do certain things. We'll talk a little bit about a passage here, a bit more on greed, but vanity is also a big part of the show. There is a whole thing about VIPs, and these are just lustful vanity people who just love watching other people die for fun, and it is pretty disturbing. I mean, it's littered throughout this entire show. But like I said, the main kind of thing here is talking about greed. And it reminds me of this passage in 1 Timothy chapter 6, 9 and 10 that we're going to take a look at here in a second. To give some context, this letter is written to Timothy by the Apostle Paul. And so this is what he says here in regards to the desire to be rich, specifically talking about greed here. But people who long to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And some people, craving money, have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows. This is a big part of this show, and it really captures what exactly goes through the hearts and minds of people who compromise their own good intentions, their own desire to be a good person, the greed of how much money they will get from this just is overwhelming. And so it is a very big part of this show. And I thought this verse just really highlighted that in particular. That being said, though, there really isn't anything explicitly about Christianity that is a part of this show. There are a few things here, very stereotypical, but most of what I saw is the sinfulness of humanity, the greed, the lust, the vanity that humanity desires and wants that goes obviously against what the Bible talks about. So with that wrapped up, it leads us nicely into what I think of Squid Game seasons 1, 2, and 3. And this show has a very interesting premise. It takes childhood games and nostalgia and literally shoots it in the face. And I mean that literally. It's a violent and brutal show, as I talked about. And it's been a very popular show since it debuted back in 2021, all the way until its final season, which was this year. It's a very unique watch. It was one that was, for the most part, kind of recommended to me to take a look at, but it wasn't one that I was like super enthralled or excited about. I've heard of it. I'm like, it seems weird and unique. Maybe I'll check it out one day. And I know there's a lot of people who love this show, who think it's one of the greatest shows ever, that it's one of the best of the 2020s. I don't have that same opinion. I can see why it's a fan favorite, but for me personally, I don't see this magnificent, this amazing show. Now, don't get me wrong, there's parts of it I enjoyed. One thing in particular was its set design. It's so simplistic, but yet so great, and the use of colors and just kind of invoking this sort of childlike feeling with the use of colors and the games and the style, and all of that was very unique and contrasting to the gory violence that is a part of it. The set design here was good, and so was its music. It's iconic and rich and just very well done. But I also enjoyed Lee Jung here as Gi-hun, right? I thought he was a really solid, enjoyable lead character throughout all three of these seasons. Which leads me into my next topic, which is the challenge here of this show, is other than Gi-hun for me, there really isn't another character I fell in love with, right? It's easy to fall in love with Gi-hun as a character because he opens the show. You see why he's in debt, why he wants to get better. You see his motivations for entering in this, and you hear some from other people and other characters. But other than player one in season one, there really isn't any other characters I would say I quite enjoyed throughout these three seasons. It's pretty forgettable, and at the same time, too, there also was some struggles for me with some of the voice dubbing of the show. I didn't watch it in Korean and use the subtitles. I just watched the voice dub of it, so maybe I'm doing it wrong. Some of the voice actors, specifically one of the leading ladies in season one, was so annoying. I understand that was the point of her character, and that's fine. I'm okay with annoying characters, but good lord, the voice was just, ugh. It was not fun. It was not an enjoyable watch in that regard. There also is some excessive, unneeded, unnecessary nudity. Granted, as a Christian, I feel like any nudity is just not worth it in film. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't drive the story forward. It is just there to sell tickets. That's firmly what I believe, and this show just has excessive, unnecessary amounts of it. I was not a fan of that at all. Nor was I a fan of stereotypes. Like I said, the Christian one definitely annoyed me here. In terms of the seasons in particular, season one was overall solid. I think overall it was a very unique premise. I think the story was really solid. I think it was cohesive from the start of the show to about midway through the last episode. I was not a fan, however, of the way it ended, that kind of plot twist that they gave for this show. I think kind of ruined it for me because I don't see this character as who he actually is. It just felt flat for me. I was disappointed by it. I wouldn't say I was very disappointed, but I was definitely disappointed by the move they made in that regard. Coming into seasons 2 and 3, season 2 overall was decent. I think they made some very solid choices to help progress the story forward. I love the idea of, especially the first several episodes, especially that one monologue between the kind of seeker at the beginning, the one who plays, I believe is Douchi, with all of them, right? You know, that monologue between him and Gi-hun, really solid storytelling. The color was, that whole scene was fantastic. But the season just kept progressively getting worse, and the characters that were in season 2 were nowhere near as memorable as season 1, even though season 1 characters were not all that memorable. It was just okay. It didn't live up to the magic of season 1, so to speak, or live up to the same quality, I think, as season 1. And then season 3 rolls around. Season 2 and 3, they are all the same time frame. I really think you could have shrunk both seasons into one full season. Maybe it goes a few extra episodes longer than season 1, but it did not need to be 2 seasons. It was dragged out. The pacing is not good, and it just was up and down, up and down, up and down, and just unnecessary time spent, especially with the voting. There was too much time taken for that. But season 3, they set up in season 2 something really interesting, really unique. I thought, okay, we're going to get some answers. I feel like we're getting close to the resolution. I'm excited. I'm curious to see how this show ends. And good Lord, the last 3 episodes, they made bold choices, but in the long run, ruined the story. They tried so hard, I think, to subvert expectations that they ruined really the plot of seasons 2 and 3. And that final episode was just not good at all. We don't get resolutions to anything. And I'm trying to keep it spoiler free, but there are story beats and stuff that are set up that are not fulfilled at the end of the season. I am left with more questions than I am answers. And I left just the show just feeling just disappointed. Like, that's it. This is where we're ending. I felt like I wasted my time watching this show. That's how bad the end of season 3 was. It was not enjoyable at all. I was very disappointed. And it's a shame because they had something so interesting set up at the beginning of season 2 and something so interesting set up at the end of season 2. And they just not only dropped the ball, they smashed it in so many pieces. And they decided, instead of giving us a fulfilling end, hey, let's just go back to America and we'll set up an American version of Squid Game. What are we doing? That's where you're spending most of your time with? You spend all this money to get Cate Blanchett to do this little thing, and that's how you want to end your show? What are we doing? If you are going to watch this show, stop at the end of season 1. So our grand totals for each of these seasons. Season 1 is going to be an 8.1 out of 10. There's things I liked. Overall, thought it was solid. A overall enjoyable season. Season 2 is going to be 7.6 out of 10. Not the same quality as the first season. The pacing was definitely off. But overall, there was still some unique things set up, and thought they left it off with some very exciting plots going forward. And season 3 is going to be a 6.3 out of 10 overall. A disappointing end to this franchise and disappointing end to this series overall, especially that final episode. There were some things to enjoy at the beginning, but as the season went on, they just made very poor decisions, and overall was very disappointed by this last season. So it's a 24 out of 25 on the conviction meter, and as I talked about, it is a multitude of different scores here. And so those are my thoughts, so let me know yours down in the comments below. Let's chat all things about Squid Game in the comments. Have you seen it? Have you not seen it? If it compromises your convictions again, don't worry about watching the show. Also, just don't worry about it in general if you don't want to be left off disappointed. That being said, though, while you're down there, consider hitting that like, subscribing for us, joining our community here on YouTube. It just helps to send us out to the algorithm, allows us to reach more Christians, to help them utilize their convictions to ultimately follow Jesus better. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with us here. We truly appreciate it. It means the absolute world to us. Before you go, there's a few video recommendations over here that YouTube is suggesting to you, one of which is a much better show from 2025, and that is going to be Andor Season 2. If you want to hear my thoughts on that amazing show, it's over here, and we'll see you all in the next one.